Brady is out, and now Patrick Mahomes is back in the Super Bowl. Does this make him the new hobby football GOAT? And are Mahomes cards your best football card investment in the long term? We'll tell you what we think next on Cards on the Table. Hello, sports card investors, and welcome to another episode of Cards on the Table, a Super Bowl week Cards on the Table. We got some big topics to talk about today. Teapot, it looks like you came ready for the party.
Let's go.
All right.
I'd like to say, I told you so.
Was it Larry Johnson throwback? What are we
Larry
looking at
Johnson,
here? Wow.
Yep. Chiefs running backs. We had
How
a
long
long
have you
run.
had that in collecting dust in your lower dresser drawers?
I wear this with pride all the time.
Man, that is a throw. It also shows that this guy's ain't grown an inch in like 30 years either. I don't know.
It's about right, actually.
And Doug.
Yes, let's talk about it.
His Kentucky Wildcats lost this last weekend to the Florida Gators against the spread. I'm sorry, Doug.
Against
sorry
the spread,
that had
okay.
to happen. Sorry that had to happen to you, Doug.
I guess Vegas just thought the delta between those two teams was so massive that Florida couldn't even come close. And to their credit, they came kind of close to winning, but they definitely did not win.
Good teams win. Great teams cover the spread. All right, let's talk about our first topic today. We're going to jump right in. We got the Super Bowl happening this weekend. Mahomes is back in the Super Bowl. That paired with the news of Brady's retirement, does this make Mahomes the current GOAT of football cards? And is his cards the best long-term investment? Are his cards the best long-term investment out of any football card of any active player today? Teapot might be a little bit biased, but I'm still going to turn to him first to get his thoughts on this.
I'm definitely biased, but I don't think the numbers lie. Similar to in the past when we've talked about numbers versus opinion, Mahomes is already very clearly the GOAT. I mean, I think he's very much consensus the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Anybody who says otherwise has got some unique opinions. I mentioned it last week, 5 years, 5 conference championships or better, 3 Super Bowls. Last year, yourself and others complained about the overtime rule that led to the Chiefs beating the Bills. It's a terrible rule. I admitted that. What people don't remember is that in 2019, the Chiefs were a victim to that overtime rule en route to Tom Brady going to win another Super Bowl before joining the Bucs. So it could have been 4 Super Bowls in 5 years. All the stats are there. He's the all-time passing leader in passing yards per game, all-time leader in passer rating, all-time leader in adjusted yards per attempt, second lowest interception percentage of all time behind Rodgers, all-time leader in passing touchdowns per game at 2.4, which is 18% better than the next closest player. And he's doing all of this in the first 5 years of his career when most people haven't yet hit their stride. If you go back and compare his numbers to Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in their first 5 played seasons, let's call it, he's way ahead of them. So I think this kind of reminds me of when Michael Jordan came in, was playing very well, but you still had Larry Bird, you still had Magic Johnson, you still had other guys. Little did people know that Michael Jordan, who was playing very well from the start of his career, would go on to be the GOAT. It's going to be very tough to catch Brady in Super Bowl victories. But when I was growing up, it was always Joe Montana's the GOAT because he's got 4 and nobody's going to win 4. So we'll see with Mahomes what happens.
And so right now, would you push all of your football cards, eggs into the Mahomes basket amongst current players?
I think he's the only safest bet on current players, on current quarterbacks. I've said in the past I have a really hard time investing in modern football players for injury reasons, but he's the one I would put my money on if I had to.
I'm glad that I can now turn my attention over here and not have to look at this bright red that literally is blinding my eyes right now. Doug, do you agree with this unbridled enthusiasm about where Patrick Mahomes is and where he's going to go?
To an extent, yes. I mean, I'm also biased because I don't care for Tom Brady at all. It just does nothing for me. I get 7 Super Bowls and 3 or whatever MVPs and so many records. I understand the greatness that he is from a statistical or an achievement standpoint, but I find him so boring, from a personality standpoint. And the Patriots are a bit of a polarizing team to a lot of people as well, where most of his success was, of course. So someone like Mahomes, who I like a lot more, the Chiefs, who are just far less objectionable overall, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I'm going Mahomes over Brady. Not in terms of maybe overall card prices. You know, Brady has a lot fewer cards, right? So something like his contenders will probably always be more valuable than a Mahomes card, regardless of what Mahomes accomplishes, because Mahomes has that value to spread across all kinds of cards and multiple different high-end cards. So in that regard, I think also that Mahomes is more accessible to a collector because you have so many different ways to invest in Mahomes cards. He's got more stuff available. You don't just have to pick from a handful of pretty expensive cards. But, you know, I don't see Mahomes likely catching Brady in things like Super Bowl victories or some statistical categories that might take 40 years of career time to catch up to. But I think as far as current players, there's no safer bet. You may not get the same return you would from a guy like Trevor Lawrence if he were to blow up, but, safer for sure.
My concern is what if they lose again this weekend? I know the stats are there, but what if they lose again this weekend? He still only has one Super Bowl victory.
Yeah.
And that could start to haunt him at some point in
Then
time.
the debate becomes like LeBron and Jordan,
Yeah.
right? I mean, people are like, yeah, but look, LeBron, how many finals he made it to with nothing, right?
Well,
so there's
I
an
think
argument
trying to
there.
compare Mahomes to LeBron, we still got a bit of a gap before we can make that comparison. But
Projecting.
I don't know. If Mahomes loses this weekend, if Cincinnati comes back next season with vengeance, if Burrow wins his first next season, there will be some people who start looking at Burrow and going, maybe this guy is the Tom Brady heir apparent, not Mahomes. I don't know.
The good thing is they're not going to lose, so we're good.
We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. I got the Eagles, but we'll see where it goes. All right, guys, we got another quarterback we want to talk about, but first, Pristine Auction has another incredible auction ending this weekend. I've got my eye on, I'm into these on-card autos, of players, and I'll give you a shout out, your Chiefs, Travis Kelce. He's in the top 5. He was in the top 5 this week, the 5 hottest cards, and they got a beautiful on-card Travis Kelce 2013 Topps Chrome, one that he hand-signed, authenticated, autograph grade of 10. I might have to bid on that at Pristine Auction this weekend.
Pretty sweet card.
How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm looking at a couple of things. Weekly auction, there's a really unique autographed Chevy Chase card, and it's like the 1981, MJ Bird Magic. It's really cool, and I think that's kind of a unique one. And then in the Elite Auction, you've got a Mahomes, the Rookies Red, numbered to 99. You've also got a Ronald Acuna Jr. Topps Dynasty, which is like the flawless of baseball. Just a beautiful card.
I like Acuna this season. Who you got, Doug?
Well, I'm going non-sports, and I'm not even going with cards at all. Sometimes you don't know you need something until you see it, and I saw a signed Stan Lee sketch of Spider-Man on a 16 by 20 canvas. And, Stan Lee, such an icon for Marvel, created Spider-Man, no longer with us. There's a million Stan Lee autos going around. There's probably a million sketches of Spider-Man, but I see this, I've got to have it.
All right, so go to pristineauction.com and use promo code SCI when you register for $10 off your first order. So the other quarterback I want to talk about, guys, is Brock Purdy. So, somebody who's not playing this weekend, obviously, but somebody who was leading the top 5 sports cards multiple times over the last couple of months before the 49ers got knocked out of the playoffs. You did a Data Dive episode this past weekend on the Market Movers YouTube channel, and you kind of went to town on this situation of people buying Brock Purdy cards. Tell us what you talked about and what you currently see with the Brock Purdy card market.
Yeah, so I kind of zoomed out some. I started with Purdy. I went really into the last 4 quarterbacks in the playoffs and started with Purdy, and obviously just a really sad situation. Little did I know last week when we were talking, and I said injuries concern me in general and his risk in football, and then I said at the end, Purdy just doesn't pass the smell test, that he was going to mess up his elbow and not even play. He was 4 for 4 in the game, and the game was tied, and then he goes out with an injury, so that changes the course of things, obviously. But Purdy, in many ways, if you look at his stats, he kind of reminded me of Gardner Minshew when he was Minshew Mania. And Gardner Minshew played his first 8 games, and the stats are pretty close too. You had Minshew in his first 8 games in his career, 250 yards a game, 62% completion, 13 touchdowns, 2 picks. Everybody was crazy about Minshew. Purdy had 6 starts with 218 yards a game, higher completion percentage at 68, 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So very similar statistics. We all know how that worked out for Minshew. And here's the reality. I don't look at any quarterbacks, and it's a bias, I guess, but it's statistical bias, that were drafted past the 2nd round. Why? Because they just don't end up being great quarterbacks. There is one exception, and we know who that is. If you go down to the other 14 players who lead in all-time NFL passing yards, they were all taken in the first or second round, like a third of them the first overall pick. So these teams know what they're doing at least part of the time drafting quarterbacks. Those are the guys who end up being great. I love the story with Purdy, but I just wouldn't mess around with cards like that.
Yeah, and you talked about the rise and the crash that can happen when you do mess around with cards like that if you're not right. Are you totally off the Purdy bandwagon too, or do you think there's a chance this guy gets to start next season and maybe leads the 49ers for years to come in the future?
Well, I was never on the bandwagon, so there's no getting back on, and I'm not going to be a first-timer either. There is nowhere for his cards to go but down. The situation was set up for failure. No matter what was going to happen with him, those prices could not sustain. And now we've kind of got a worst-case scenario, right, where he's got the injury. We never knew what his status was going to be for next year. A lot of this was just speculation. Could he be the starter in San Francisco? Now, who knows what's going to happen? This injury certainly sets him back, and it's certainly bad news for anybody who's been buying Purdy. But I think also the other problem was you're either buying certified or mosaic, cards that are never going to hold value.
Correct.
If you're going to buy Purdy, you're going to wait for Optic, Prism, Select. You're going to wait for, the better quality cards, the more flagship runs, right? And at that point, you're also going to get them for much cheaper than you will when the initial hype starts. So the move was always to wait for something like Prism to come out when the prices have stabilized. And by that time, maybe his future is going to stabilize a little bit as well. We'll know what he's doing in terms of his role in the 49ers or if he goes somewhere else.
I was going to say that there could actually be some buy low opportunities on Purdy. If you want to speculate on Purdy, actually the time to do that is going to be over the next few months as you have major sets like Prism coming out. Buy some of the low numbered cards. But it's pure speculation. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break and be right back with 2 more awesome topics. Guys, go on the App Store on your phone and grab that new Market Movers app in the App Store. And we've now implemented a 7-day free trial in the app version of Market Movers. So you can get that 7 days free if you download the Market Movers app. Okay, let's go to this next topic. This was suggested by one of our YouTube viewers. They wanted to know what's going on with the soccer card market. It didn't perhaps go up the way people thought it might during this last World Cup. We've talked about that a little bit. But more importantly, what does the future of soccer cards look like from here? Was this just a couple year, spike like F1 had a little bit of a shorter spike and now there's a lack of interest? Or are you still very, very bright on the long-term future of soccer cards, Doug?
Well, you can't compare it to F1 because it's not a flash in the pan. This has been more consistent. A lot of people, I think, were kind of on the outside looking in on the soccer card market. Were looking to see what impact the World Cup had. We talked about this either right during the World Cup or just after it. But someone like myself who's been collecting soccer, who's been investing in soccer, was never looking at the World Cup for a bump. Maybe for whoever wins the World Cup or whoever's Golden Boot or some sort of just standout performance, that might see a particular bump. But the soccer card market is still in its infancy. Prior to 2019, this stuff was not really even printed that much. And primarily soccer fans are used to stickers in a lot of ways. Card collecting is sort of an American thing, and soccer hasn't necessarily been an American sport. That could change as the U.S. men's national team gets better and as we host the World Cup in 4 years. But also we're starting to see card shows pop up overseas now. We've seen several European card shows in the past year. So as the hobby gets more exposure to the core soccer market, I think it also continues to grow. But I think it's a slow and steady rise. And one of the things that you look at is, again, these older soccer cards pre-2019. I just got back an Mbappe out of 2018 Prism. It was a red mosaic. That's a retail parallel, non-numbered, out of a retail set. And the total population is less than 100. Mm-hmm. That's unbelievable. You would never see that from something in 2018 out of basketball. Think of how many cards Luka has. Now you've got Mbappe with a card that's a retail parallel under 100. It's just it's completely underprinted pre-2019. It's completely, under-transacted, to be honest with you. So I think there's a ton of potential there. There's still a lot of opportunities to buy and flip and get into prospecting. But again, it's in its infancy. It's just going to continue to grow, but steadily.
I think he makes great points. What do you think?
Yes, the first point I would have is the U.S.-based thing. This is where cards are most popular. Stickers still very popular in other countries. But I have 2 other theories on this. And you've talked about way back when you started this channel, why you thought the NBA and basketball was particularly a strong investment, because it's a superstar-focused league, and it's one league, and these players can put up these gaudy stat lines that we are especially seeing this year. So the first problem is there's too many teams, there's too many leagues, and people are very club fans before player fans. So you might be a Robert Lewandowski fan, but also a Bayern Munich fan, but you are a Munich fan before you're a Lewandowski. So now he goes to Barcelona, you're not necessarily like as interested in his cards. People are more player fans sometimes in the NBA than they are even teams. The second piece is has everything to do with stats. There's goals, and then there's very little other than that. You get assists, and people who really love soccer get into more, interceptions and other things. Advanced stats still, I think, have a long way to go to equivocate and help tell the picture of how valuable a player is. If you look up the top 10 to 15 players in soccer in the world, of course, you're going to have Mbappe, you're going to have Haaland, you're going to have Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar, and Lewandowski, maybe at him at 6, right? But then you start getting into Virgil van Dijk, N'Golo Kante, you start getting into some of these other guys that are really, really talented, who play in mid or as center back in other positions, who many clubs would say, I will pick that guy and take him before I take some of these strikers, because there's more of them. They're really the foundation to a team. But there's not any stats to tell the story of their real value. So I think that there's got to be something to help tell that story better and say, look, even though this guy's not scoring goals, having a hat trick, he's still incredibly valuable, and his card should be up in value too.
Yeah, these are fair points, kind of point, counterpoint there. It's interesting. I just look long-term and see the growth of soccer in America. Look at the trend lines. Think about where soccer could be 10, 20, 30 years from now, paired with the low population of the early stuff. I think there's opportunity. I'll be interested to look at the Burbank Card Show this weekend for soccer cards. Teapot, you're going to be there. I'm going to be there. Check out the Burbank Card Show this weekend in Ontario, California. And if you're there, come say hi. We'll be set up and at that card show actually tonight and Friday night and Saturday and Sunday. We'll be there the whole time through. So hope to see you guys there. Second question submitted by one of our YouTube viewers was around Jokic, actually. This is actually a really good question. It's an intriguing question. I have the same question. Why is the Joker not more popular in the hobby? This guy is on just an unbelievable pace. I mean, he literally has the very, very real possibility of winning a third MVP award, which is almost unheard of. Not something your boy Giannis was unable to do, right, even though, a couple years ago that was the talk, right? Yep. And yet it seems like there's just very little buzz around him in the hobby. What's going on here, Doug?
Yeah, so like you, I also have this question, so I'm not necessarily the best person to answer it because I don't know the answer. I want to know the answer. But when we think about guys in the NBA that are completely undervalued, there's a couple of names that always pop up. A guy like Tim Duncan is always considered one of the most undervalued players in the hobby. Shaq, another guy, super undervalued in the hobby. So the consistency there is big guys. People just don't love the big guys. And, the Joker, while his stats are amazing, I love him. He's the Vegas favorite for MVP. He's just not going to get that kind of attention, and he's probably the least flashy of any of those guys, right? So at least someone like Giannis, who is a big, is extremely flashy. And then you've got guys that are taking over the highlights, like a Ja Morant. He's never going to capture a highlight like that. The Nuggets, they're the number one team in the West. They're probably tied NBA for the best record right now. Would a title take him to that next step? I don't know that it would. Does getting out of Denver, would that, going to a bigger market team, would that help him? I don't know if it would. I think there's just a bias against big men, especially guys that don't put up crazy highlight reels, and he's one of those guys. And I think it's a mistake. I think he's amazing, and he should be valued.
Thoughts?
Well said. You had the conversation with Jason Kuntz, and he talked about Shaq. And he's like, if Shaq's so popular,
Shaq's another one.
He's on that TNT.
Boggles my mind that his cards are worth as little as they are.
It's really confusing, honestly, for as great as he was, and as popular as he still is as an entertainer and doing philanthropy and all kinds of things. So he's a center. Jokic is a center. He plays for the Nuggets. Human psychology, he looks like a goon. I mean, he just looks like a big goon. His flashiest plays are his passing, and he's probably the best passer in the NBA, of anybody. He is his vision and his accuracy are absolutely incredible. He kind of makes plays that looks like Magic Johnson, like the way he throws the ball and slings it and bounce passes. He's incredibly skilled. But I think if Shaq isn't popular, I'm still waiting for that. There's got to be more media attention around these guys. It's easier, I guess, to tell the story about how Ja posterized somebody. Or LeBron did this big flashy dunk. Joker's not really, posterizing anybody with dunks, but if the media would be a little more intellectually honest and just tell the story of how good these guys really are, maybe that catches up. I don't know. I don't know what else it could take. I think Duncan and Shaq are two great examples of guys whose cards should be worth a lot more.
I hear you. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, please give it a subscribe, and go download that new Market Movers app on your phone right now. Give it a try. We appreciate you. Leave us a comment with your question for next episode, and we'll see you then. Take care.